守りたいと思う心に嘘はなかった。大切にしたいと思う心は誰よりも強いはずだった。優しさから生まれた感情はやがて殺意へと変わり、真っ白だった思いは赤と黒で染まってゆく。それが守りたかった日常の崩壊を意味していると分かっていながら。たたり殺し。何が間違っていたのか、その答えを探して悲劇はさらに広がってゆく。
北条さんは今日もお休みですか。古出さんは何か知っていますか。
The teacher's voice wasn't critical, but Rika hung her head, unable to answer, and I felt really bad for her. The teacher called Rika up, and they had an exchange in hushed tones at the dais. I think maybe Satoko's dad just showed up out of nowhere, found Satoko, and was probably talking to her like early in the morning. That's my only guess regarding the previous notes or tips that we just got. At first, Rika said that Satoko's fever had grown worse, but everyone in class knew it was a lie, because every day, Rika brought Satoko's bento with her.
さとこちゃん、どうしちゃったんだろうね。
俺が知るかよ。
I'm the one who wants to know most of all. It was already the third day since Satoko's first absence. Ever since then, I haven't felt good. Wait. So we skipped ahead by 2 days. Huh. Cause like, how to word it? Normally, or at least I think this is the first time we've had a chapter outright say that we're skipping ahead. I believe every single other time that we've had anything involving the like chapters days or any of the dates that we have throughout the game, they're usually consistent. For example, in chapter 2 we started on a Sunday and ended 12 days later, essentially, for the most part. Here, this is the first time I believe we've just skipped ahead. It's like, hey, it's 3 days later, so fuck. So now this is confusing me now, because like up until this point I thought again that the game was consistent in the sense that like the days were consistent. It didn't really matter what day you started on. You would have like the Higurashi happen like by now, right? Like tonight's the Higurashi. Or sorry, the Watanagashi. The Higurashi are the fucking cicadas, I believe. Anyway, ever since then I haven't felt good. Until just last Sunday, everything had been so much fun. I had reached out to Satoko like a real older brother, and we spent that time quietly but warm and comfortable. So right now it's Thursday. Sunday was their free day, right? Like after the baseball game. And then they had school, and she was absent. She was absent on Tuesday, and today's Wednesday, when she was absent as well, is what I meant. So why had it suddenly been flipped over? The more I thought about it, the more I thought that the world had taken a turn for the worse ever since Oishi-san arrived. Thinking on it now, maybe the strange apprehensions plaguing me the night before Oishi-san had arrived had been a sign. Kuraudo Oishi, Oyashiro-sama's servant.
そんなことあるもんか。あいつが現れたから、サトコが今年のタタリに会う役だなんて決められてたまるかよ。
Just what sort of slip-up had I committed to cause those fun times to end so suddenly? Yes, it was the day before Oishi-san appeared. Shion, Mion, and Rena had spoken of the curse surrounding Satoshi and his disappearance, and it was so sinister, it gave me a bad premonition. Such a small thing was the slip-up that invited Oyashiro-sama's servant? It was absurd. I kept on groaning to myself that I would never accept it ever. I obviously wasn't the only one suppressing my feelings. Mion and Rena were too. Everyone in the class was doing it. Rika knew something about Satoko's situation, but she wouldn't tell us. Rika still held a calm attitude like a cat basking in the sun. Did she? Is that the face she's making? Because she looks like slightly dejected and the teacher looks super pissed off. But she's always like really pissed off. She needs like curry in her veins to feel normal. Manga gamer jump scare. Oh god. Anyway. But she was being unbelievably stubborn about this whole thing. She didn't want to tell us, and that wouldn't change no matter how many times we asked her. Everyone understood that, so nobody questioned her.
リカちゃんが言わないならさ、言うまで待つしかないよね。逆に言わないってことは、言う必要もない程度のことかもしれないし。
There was no persuasive power and reassurance given with an anxious face like that. Mion was being taciturn, and just looked up at the sky with a somehow annoyed expression. I couldn't tell if she was unhappy that Rika wouldn't talk about it with her own friends, or if she was concerned over Satoko's well-being. She's probably more pissed about Oi-san existing. And what about me? My anxiety was suffocating me day after day. If someone else were looking at me, then maybe I'd look annoyed like Mion. Someone tapped my shoulder. It was Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun.
前原さん、ちょっといいですか？
またボールが引っかかったか？今度はお前たちで何とかしてみろよ。いつまでも先輩に頼るのは良くないぜ。
I didn't feel like going along with them, so I was a little unsympathetic with my response.
ちょっと気になる噂を聞いたんすよ。
噂？
はい。ひょっとすると関係があるかもと思って。
A rumor about Satoko. They hadn't said that, but it didn't seem unrelated. They didn't want to talk in the classroom, so they pulled me behind the school building, lending further credence to that thought. The back of the school was damp and humid like always. Students didn't really come here because they wanted to. It might, however, have been the ideal location for trading rumors away from prying eyes.
富田君、岡村君、その噂話ってもちろん聡子の欠席と関係のある話なんだろうな。
関係があるかはわからないですけど、あるいは
聡子は一体どうしたってんだ？風邪なのか？それともひょっとしてもっと重い病気か怪我か何かで？
いえ、それがむしろ逆で、うちのばあちゃんの話だと、昨日の昼にうちの店に豆腐を買いに来たらしいんです。
Oh, Tomita's family runs a tofu shop, added Okamura-kun.
豆腐屋さんに買い物？
My voice sounds so stupefied, even I can tell. It was understandable. I was worried about what grave illness or injury she had, when the person herself had been out and about shopping for tofu.
で、聡子はどうだったんだよ？元気そうだったのか？それとも病み上がりでマスクでもしてたとか、松葉杖で包帯だらけだったとか。
Crutches.
いえ、別に病気とか怪我とかそういうわけじゃなかったらしいんですが。
I should have felt relieved that it wasn't an illness or an injury. But my anxiety wasn't going away. Because Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun's expressions weren't looking any better.
絹ごし豆腐を一丁買っていったそうなんですが、ばあちゃんが言うにはおかしいと。
おかしい？なぜ？絹ごし豆腐を買って何が悪い？
Irritated by how roundabout they were being, I had to desperately fight that irritation from creeping into my voice.
北条とフルデってほら二人暮らしでそんなにお金持ちってわけじゃないですよね。だから二人はいつも安い木綿豆腐しか買わないんです。一番高い絹ごし豆腐なんか買ったことないんです。
木綿だって絹ごしだってどっちも豆腐だろ。
豆腐は豆腐です。
たまにはうまい豆腐が食いたくなっただけかもしれないじゃないか。
それはそうですけど。
I knew how transparent I sounded right then. This wasn't anything trivial. It was some kind of important clue. Not the cheap firm tofu, but the expensive, soft kind. Shopping not in the evening after school, but in the middle of the day. I couldn't figure out what those things meant. As I thought hard about it, Okamura-kun took his turn to speak.
次は僕っすね。これも噂なんですけど。
帰ってきた。
Oh, I skipped ahead. But apparently he's back. He.
何が？誰が？
北条のおじさんが。
Satoko's uncle. Right, I think Coach told me about him. Their aunt and uncle had taken them in after Satoko and Satoshi lost their parents in the accident.
去年のお社様のたたりで怖くなって町に逃げたっていう。北条こいつヤクザみたいな怖くて乱暴なやつで。
Everything Coach told me came back in bits and pieces. Right. The mean aunt and uncle who had tormented them all this time, or all the time. I think he said that after their aunt was beaten to death by the deviant, he ran away to his lover's house in Okinomiya in fear of the curse.
そいつが帰ってくるとどうして聡子が学校を休んで真っ昼間に絹ごし豆腐を買う羽目になるんだ？
Because he asked her to. My underclassmen clammed up and looked downwards. There must have been some big hint buried in there. Even if I didn't understand, if I told Mion or Rena about it, maybe they'd know something.
あ、ごめんな二人とも。せっかく好意で話を聞かせてくれたのに、なんだか問い詰めるような言い方になっちゃって。
あ、いえ、いいんすよ。北条が重病で寝たきりになってないことが分かっただけでも、ほら、儲けもんじゃないですか。
That might be true, but it still won't. It won't make the clouds over my mind fade away.
あ、前原さん、ほらあれ。
Kamura-kun cried wildly, pointing over my shoulders behind me. Startled, I turned around, and way on the other side of the schoolyard, near the school gate, I saw a figure trudging forth. Holy fuck, she looks terrible. I burst into a run faster than I could speak, so that as quickly as possible I could see with my own eyes that she was okay.
スタートゴー！
Satoko seemed taken aback by me shouting and running over to her.
なんですの圭一さん。突然大声を出して走ってくるから何事かと驚きましたわ。
バカ！俺のことなんかどうでもいいだろう。それよりどうしたってんだよ聡子。3日俺心配で心配で。
心配性ですわね。たかだか3日ですわよ。もう圭一さんは心配性なんですから。
From listening to her, she seemed like the normal Satoko, but I could tell she was clearly acting strangely. Her smile was somehow forlorn, and her complexion was bad for some reason.
北条、大丈夫だったのかよ。風邪とかじゃないのか？
Tomita and Okamura both expressed their
一
concerns.
体どうしたってんだよ。3日も俺がどれだけ心配してたか。
ごめんあそばせですわ。ちょっとお家のお掃除をしたりしてたんですのよ。
For 3 whole days.
だいぶ長いこと使ってませんでしたから、
Oh,
もう家
right.
中ほこりだらけでして。
That house.
はあ？サトコ、お前何を言ってんだ？なんで家の掃除なんかで学校を休まなきゃなんないんだ？
Satoko didn't answer me. Instead, she passed by me and headed for the entrance.
もう今はお弁当の時間ではありませんの。私はお腹が空いてますのよ。
It was certainly lunch break. I couldn't force her to stop after she told me she wanted lunch, since she was so hungry.
まあいいや。リカちゃんは3日間毎日お前の弁当を持ってきてくれてるんだぜ。今日はちゃんと食べてやれそうだな。とにかく早く教室へ行こう。みんなを安心させてやろうぜ。
そうですわね。
She looked so happy. When, like, a bit ago, she looked dejected and terrible.
皆さんにご心配をおかけしてしまったかもしれませんわね。あはははは。人気者は辛いでございますわ。
I put a hand on Satoko's shoulder and we ran to the classroom together. Up close, I was able to verify that Satoko looked somehow weak. All this anxiety was supposed to go away when I saw her again. That's what I had thought. But now, I actually started to have quite different fears. What the fuck happened, Satoko? Everyone in the class, of course, reacted in the exact same way I had. We were worried about you. I'm glad to see you well. I'm glad to see you're well. What were you doing for 3 days? Our classmates showered her in questions.
本当にご迷惑をおかけしましたわね。
As she cackled, she chowed down on the bento Rika had made for her. Those in the teacher's lounge must have been informed of Satoko's arrival because our teacher sprinted into the classroom, her breathing ragged.
北条さん、
あら先生、3日間もご心配をおかけしましたわね。ご覧の通り元気でピンピンしてますわ。
もう本当に心配してたんですからね。
I was very worried about you, she says, scowling at her. Like, holy fuck.
お弁当が食べ終わったら職員室に来るんですよ。いろいろとお話があります。
3日もサボったからきっと大目玉に違いありませんわね。
Satoko laughed sheepishly while she scratched her head, and the rest of the class burst out into laughter. The teacher was acting angry, but she breathed a sigh of relief at seeing Satoko healthy and smiling as she ate her lunch with the class surrounding her.
でも安心したよな、レナ。
あ、ごめん。無事でよかったよね。
I looked at Rena and knew. She had a sense that something about Satoko was off too. I looked to see Mion detach from the clamor as well, with a somewhat grim expression. But Rika, on the other hand, was smiling from ear to ear. She spread out the bento boxes one by one as Satoko finished them. Finally, Satoko was satisfied, and after enjoying a thorough conversation with her classmates, remembered that she had been called to the teacher's lounge.
めんどくさいんですけど、行かないともっと怒られてしまいそうですからね。僕も一緒に行きますですよ。
Satoko rises from her seat, and Rika runs over to her.
ごめん遊ばせ圭一さん。ちょっと怒られてまいりますわ。
おう。なんだったら俺も一緒に付き合うぜ。例のカレーの悪口の時、一緒に職員室で怒られた仲じゃねえか。
それには及ばないのです。圭一はここでお留守番なのですよ。
should mind his place. Oh my god. Rika's words were gentle, but the firm rejection was clear in her eyes. The two of them exited into the hallway, walking shoulder to shoulder. After seeing them off, the class breathed a collective sigh of relief, broke apart, and went back to their usual lunch break banter. We, however, couldn't go back to how we usually were. Not I, not Mion, and of course, not Erina. They stared at the classroom exit. They stared at the classroom exit. They stared at the classroom exit Satoko and Rika had left through. Their expressions a little distant and grim.
俺たちは仲間だ。そうだろう、みんな。
I blurted out something strange, so Mion and Erina turned around with dubious expressions. Oh. I had forgotten about this face. Like what they looked like.
俺は仲間に隠し事はしない。だから、さっき聞いたばかりのことを言う。
I told him about the stories I had heard from Tomita-kun and Okamura-kun earlier about the tofu shop and how Satoko's uncle had apparently come back. All at once without letting them speak.
これが俺の知るすべてだ。だからミオンもレナもしていることがあるなら話してくれ。俺は俺の知るすべてを話したぞ。
I ended my sentence firmly and looked into Mion and Rena's eyes in turn. Rena stared right back at me. Her eyes didn't falter. Without even opening her mouth, I could tell she wasn't hiding anything. Then our gazes turned to Mion.
別に、私は隠して黙ってるわけじゃないよ。
Mion couldn't seem to endure silent stares and began to talk timidly, as if she was guilty of something.
でも、ケイちゃんが話したなら、私も話さないわけにはいかないよね。
みーちゃん、何か知ってるの？
いや、聡子のおじが帰ってきたっての、帰ってきた初日から知ってたよ。この間の日曜日に、ふらっとひなみ沢に帰ってきたって。
どうしてそれを黙ってた？
ごめん。
My angry shout caused Mion to flinch away, look down, and hang her head uncomfortably.
ケイチくん、怒るようなことじゃないよ。みーちゃん怖がってる。
あ、ごめん。つい大声を。
I lowered my head in apology. Mion accepted it, collected herself, and continued. According to her, her uncle's relationship with his lover, whom he had been with in Okinomiya, had collapsed. Without anywhere to go, he went back home to Hinamizawa. And, on that Sunday, the day of the barbecue, her uncle ran into Satoko and brought her back to the house.
自宅になんで連れ戻すんだよ。
ろくでなしの寄生虫だからね。自分一人じゃ炊事はおろか、掃除一つできないし。
そんな、炊事やお掃除のためにさとこちゃんを連れ戻したっていうの？
I remembered that she said she had been cleaning the house when I met her back at the school gate. A moment later, the pieces fell into place, into the jigsaw puzzle of unease. Now, do remember, Keiichi is a fucking idiot, which is why he didn't piece any of this together at first. And it has to be spelled out, like, it has to be spelled out for him. And this happens every single time, which is, well, it's kind of funny. And as for what the puzzle depicted when I saw it from afar, I could see the answer clearly.
サトコが家に閉じ込められて、いじめられながら家事をやらされてる
Yeah.
っていう噂なんだよ。
If you knew that, why didn't you speak up? I nearly yelled that at Mion but hastily stopped myself.
みーちゃん、それ本当なの？
私がこの目で確かめたわけじゃないから、本当かどうかは知らないけど。
Mion looked down again and, staring at the floor, grew quiet.
去年みたいに意地悪なおじさん夫婦のところで暮らしてた時みたいに。
でもさ、そのおじさんって家事はからっきしなんだろう。聡子が重宝なわけだから、何もいじめてるってわけじゃないかもしれないだろう。
圭一くん、何を根拠に言ってるのか知らないけど、いい
Jeez.
加減なことは言わない方がいいよ。
Irena clearly and directly got mad at me. You don't know much about this, so don't talk as though you do. Yes, that's clearly what she meant.
じゃあレナは知ってるのかよ。
私だって知らないよ。今ここで聞くまで、聡子ちゃんがおじさんの家に連れ戻されたなんて知らなかったもの。でもね、1年前とはまるで状況が違うの。
状況が違うってどういうことだよ。
サトシくんがいない。
サトシはすごく妹思いのいい兄だったんだよ。いつもサトコをかばってた。意地悪なおじおばのとばっちりが少しでもサトコにかぶらないように盾になってくれてた。
家には意地悪なおじさんと聡子ちゃんが2人きりなんだよ。それがどれだけ行き詰まるものか、圭一くんにだって想像がつくんじゃないかな。ひなみ沢に帰ってきた理由だって身を寄せてた愛人が蒸発したからでしょ。そんな不愉快な理由で帰ってきた人がどうして聡子ちゃんに優しくできるっていうの？
She was right. It wasn't easy for me to imagine Satoko not being tormented.
ごめん。
あ、こっちこそごめん。問い詰めるような口調になっちゃったね。
Just a little bit. An awkward atmosphere floated among us. The three of us remained silent and just stared at the floor. Finally, we heard the principal's bell ringing. The teacher came back with Satoko and Rika at her side.
さあさあ、午後の授業を始めますよ。委員長、号令。起立。
ごめんなさいね。失礼。
Not even a meep from Rika. I couldn't read anything from Satoko's vaguely sheepish expression. But given the clouded look Rika was wearing behind her, it was tough to laugh off the disquieting story I'd heard from Mion.
よーし、久々に全メンバーが揃ったからね。久しぶりにパーッと大部活で盛り上がろうじゃないの。
Yeah, perfect. Indeed, in times like these, the best thing to do was obviously get rowdy and scheme against one another in a club activity.
望むところだよ。ねえ、さとこちゃん、やろやろ。
サトコが好きだったゲームあるでしょ。ほら、なんだったっけ。なんでも構わないよ。言ってみ。言ってみ。
Mion laughed happily, took a bunch of games out of the club locker, and lined them up on the desks. I think that was the first time Mion's ever let someone else decide on the game for her. I could tell she was being especially considerate to Satoko, thinking that whatever her circumstances were, if we could just enjoy our time together as a group, that might be some comfort, some diversion. Satoko seemed to understand her feelings too, and smiled vaguely, though pleased. But her head slowly moved from side to side.
ありがたいですけど、お気持ちだけで結構ですわ。いろいろしなければならないことがありますので。
Even Rika hung her head in remorse.
おいおいおいおいおい、本気なわけ？部活メンバーが久しぶりに揃ったってのにお流れになっちゃうわけ？敵前逃亡は罰ゲームってのは快速第何条だったっけ？
やめなよみーちゃん、無理に付き合わせちゃダメだよ。
別におじさんは無理強いしてるわけじゃないよ。ただ大盛り上がりした方が絶対に楽しいと思って。
本当にお気持ちだけで嬉しいんですのよ。ご安心なさいませ。次に戦うときは皆さんまとめてでっかい罠にはめてご覧に入れますわ。
Satoko, while insulting us, still said she couldn't participate in the club today, and apologized. She quickly put her things into her bag and pattered out onto the hallway, disappearing. It all happened in the blink of an eye.
Satoko.
Rika stared lonesomely as her friend hurried home, unable to be a part of club activities. Silence filled the classroom. Both the cheerful voices of her classmates in the schoolyard and the voices of the cicadas sounded like they were coming from somewhere far away. From some faraway world.
つまんないの？
The silence was broken by Mion's bitterness as she began putting the games on the desk back into the locker. Everyone just stared absently at Satoko's seat, now empty.
リカちゃん、そろそろ話してくれてもいいんじゃないかな。
Rena made as gentle a smile as she possibly could and spoke softly to Rika. Even without hearing it from her, we pretty much knew the situation at this point. Satoko's uncle had broken up with his lover and had come back home to Hinamizawa. Yeah. And he had taken Satoko back home and forced her to do all the household work. And that all had to be pretty rough on her. Thinking this was common knowledge to everyone, I skipped to the important part.
だいぶひどいのか？
Maybe Mion and Rena wanted to ask the same question. Nobody spoke. We all just stared, waiting for Rika-chan's reply. Rika still didn't answer us. We were hoping for her to say no, but her silence was a bad enough sign.
去年だっけ？おじ夫婦の元にいた時もこんな状況だったんだろ
うん。あの時は夫婦喧嘩のとばっちりみたいなのがほとんどだったからさ。こうして部活で時間を潰して家にいる時間を極力減らすのも一つの手だったんだけど。
今は家事を強制されてるから学校に残ることもできないんだね。
Shit. Satoko's not a slave. Who do you think you are, ignoring your own inability to live properly and basically putting Satoko under house arrest?
常識的に考えてこんなのおかしいんじゃねえのか？いろいろと状況証拠は必要だろうけど、こういうのって虐待だろ？
Has family abuse been a top theme? I mean, I'd assume so. It's here. I mean, it's being, mentioned directly with chapter 2. It's been implied that Shion was abused in some way by her family, in the sense that she was ostracized, she was kicked out, and the like. Because she was the younger twin. And the younger twin is usually, well, the one that gets discarded in the Sonozaki family. So maybe that's what, maybe that's the main theme. I don't remember that happening in chapter 1.
警察とかに通報できないのかよ？
そうだよね。 体罰の証拠とかがあれば警察に通報できると思うよ。あるいはそういうのって地域の民生委員さんとかに相談できないの？
Eren and I kept saying police, police, as though we're nothing, but Mion's response sounded like she thought we were a little naive.
みんな簡単に言ってくれるけどさ、それを立証するリスクを考えたことある？
リスクってなんだよ。
一昨年の冬かな。通報したんだよ。
2 winters ago.
児童相談所に。虐待があるからすぐに何とかしてくれって。
そうだったんだ。
Right, I think Arena moved in a year ago.
それで？
電話してすぐにお役所の人が来てくれたよ。で、聡子とかサトシとかに事情聴取してた。ついでにおじ夫婦のところにもね。
聡子とサトシに聞くまではいいが、おじ夫婦にまで聞くのはまずいんじゃないのか？
両者の意見を聞いて総合的に判断するんだとさ。ご立派ご立派。
で、結果はどうだったの？
様子見。
Oh, it's that song again. Wait, hold on. I'll turn it up a tiny bit.
様子見ってなんだよそれ。
おじさんとっても勉強になっちゃったんだけどさ、法律ではね、暴行か育児放棄が認められなきゃ虐待とは言わないんだってさ。聡子もサトシもよく小づかれてたらしいけど、別に傷跡が残るようなレベルじゃなかったし、3食の飯も一応食えてたし、寝床もあったし、心理的外傷を与える言動をったって別にカセットテープで証拠があったわけじゃないし、村の人たちだって実際に乱暴してる現場は見たことないからね。
Yeah, Gear. The song is really good.
いくら意地悪だからって人前で乱暴はしないでしょ、誰だって。
で、その後どうなったの？
しばらくは毎週決まった日に民生委員さんが訪問してたみたい。おじ夫婦も自分たちが見張られてることを気にして目立ついじめはしなくなったらしいけど、それで済むわけないでしょ普通。
より陰湿ないじめ方に加速していったってことだね。
Hmm. Right. I mean, that usually happens. Like when an abuser gets called out, usually they behave before, well, things get worse. Mion sighed and nodded.
おばのやつが特にねちっこくってさ、女特有の陰湿さっていうのかな、相当いやらしいことをしてたらしいよ。聡子、最後の方は呼吸するだけのボロ人形みたいだった。
So what? From that conclusion, does that mean they should never have contacted child welfare in the first place?
わかった？誰の目にも明らかな虐待の証拠がなかったらお手上げなんだよ。むしろ状況を悪化させかねない。あれは失敗だった。
After hearing that even public organizations, the one thing they thought was dependable, couldn't do anything, everyone hung their heads.
つまり、誰の目にも明らかな虐待の証拠が見つかるまで通報すべきでな。
うん。まあそういうこと。
I considered Satoko's current situation. She was brought back to her house. It was a little difficult to call that abuse. She was being tormented and forced to do the chores. How she was being tormented would be the key, but without concrete evidence, it would be difficult to prove. If she had some kind of external injury, that would work. But as far as we could tell from today, she had nothing like that. And being forced to do the chores, that was a bit weak too. There had to be better evidence that she was without a doubt being abused. I know. Her uncle had ignored Satoko's existence for a whole year and went to live with his lover in town. Didn't that fall under one of the definitions of abuse that Mion had mentioned? Child neglect.
それは立派な育児放棄だね。どうなのみーちゃん。
おじが今もいなければ育児放棄は認定されそうだけど、今この瞬間は同居してるわけでしょ。今までは別居だったけど、心を入れ替えて同居することにしたなんて言われたら、また様子見なんてことになりかねないよ。
Oh, that sucks, dude. Once we reported it, we would need to be absolutely sure they'd interpret it as abuse. Maybe we needed far more concrete evidence, lest we repeat last year's mistake.
なんだか悲しい。
No, 2 winters ago, Keiji. 2 years ago.
ということはつまり、さとこちゃんが乱暴されて大きな傷が残るまで黙って見てろってことなんだよね。
The only plan I could think of was, in the end, just watching and waiting. It left me in shock when I realized that it would be the same policy as that of the officials who had made the situation worse. As Mion said, reporting it to a public agency would be a gamble. If we're going to pick a fight, it would have to be one we couldn't afford to lose. If we were gambling without enough money, without enough evidence, our defeat would be assured. If we took the time to amass enough money that we could be sure of victory, then that would mean pretending that we didn't see Satoko's plight for a considerable amount of time.
こんなところで話を振ってごめんな。リカちゃんはどうして一人暮らしができるんだ？
Erika had lost her parents, if I recalled correctly. From what I'd heard, she had no relatives either. She was forced to live on her own as a result, but her life was unfettered, free of restriction. If she could somehow grant that freedom to Satoko too...
ほら、リカちゃんって両親いないのに生活してるだろ。保護者のいない子供って孤児院みたいなところに入れられちゃうんじゃないっけ？
圭一くん、それひどい。
悪口で言ってるんじゃねえよ。そこにサトコを救うヒントがあるかもしれないと思って聞いてみただけなんだ。リカちゃん、気分を害したならごめんな。
Rika shook her head, not particularly disturbed.
それはですね、
Oh?
実は村長さんちの子供になっているからなのです。
補足がいるね。村長の君吉のおじいちゃんがリカちゃんの保護者なんだよ。ちゃんと県知事の許可を得た正式な。
養子みたいなものか？
養子とは違う。別に籍を入れなくても保護者にはなれるんだよ。
分かってきた。つまりリカちゃんは普通に暮らしてるけど、法律の上では村長さんの家に住んでることになってるんだね。
まあそんなとこ。そのおかげでリカちゃんは孤児院送りを免れてるってわけ。孤児院っていうか児童養護院のことだけど。
難しいことはよくわかりませんが、つまりはそういうことなのです。
ミオン、今、興味深い席が違っても保護者になれるみたいなことを言ったよな。じゃあ形だけでも村長さんとかがサトコの保護者になってくれればいいんじゃないのか？
I think her uncle would probably fight that in court or something. Then she'd be in the same position as Rika, and she could go back to her old life.
ところがそうはいかないの。だっておじだって保護者のつもりなんだもん。
ちょっと待て、わけがわからなくなったぞ。そもそも保護者ってなんだ？
In legal terms, a guardian and a parent weren't necessarily synonyms. Oh, fuck. So whoever was actually looking after her at home would be considered her guardian.
なら、おじは保護者じゃないな。ずっとサトコをほったらかしにしてた。
でも保護者だと主張されたらそれまでだよ。
Yeah.
サトコが連れ戻されてから数日、その間の食事代はおじの財布から出てるよね。一応面倒を見てると主張できなくもない。それに1年間サトコをほったらかしたとはいえ、 最初の1年間は生活の面倒を見た実績がある。でも村長にはその実績はない。
意地悪なおじさんと村長さんが同時に保護者を主張したら、おじさんの方が強いってこと？
その可能性が高いってこと。それに保護者ってのは実際に面倒を見てる人を指すんだよ。実際に寝床や食事を握ってるおじと名義だけ貸そうとしてる村長じゃどうにもならない。
じゃあ村長が実際に生活の面倒を見ればいいじゃないか。
This is where Keiichi starts to get very emotional because he really wants to protect her. And he's not going to be making any sense.
そうすれば名実ともに村長が保護者になれるんだろう。
We just need to shelter Satoko. That might lead to her uncle being desperate to take her back, but will stubbornly refuse him.
そんな簡単にはいかないよ。聡子は育ち盛りの女の子なんだよ。人間一人の面倒を見てくださいなんて猫の子預けるのとはわけが違う。
じゃあ監督はどうだよ。監督ってよくは知らないけど裕福なんだろ。自分で言ってたくらいなんだし、本当の親でなくても保護者になれるなら監督でも可能なんだ。監督なら聡子の面倒を立派に見てくれる気がする。
だから聡子をペットみたいに考えないでって。ケイちゃんはさっきから聡子を誰かに押し付ける話ばっかり。人間一人の生活の面倒を見る責任ってものをもっと慎重に考えて。監督に聞いたの。聡子を引き取って面倒を見るってちゃんと確約を得たわけ？
そんなの得てないよ。でも監督なら絶対に OK するだろ
う。まあいいよ。100歩譲って監督が OK したとするよ。でもダメなんだよ。保護者は独身じゃダメなんだよ。
Right. He said it himself. He needs to be married in order to actually adopt Satoko. That's right. Coach, didn't he say it himself? He was alone, so he couldn't do it. Shit, what the hell? Why is being single such a disadvantage in this society? Then all you could do is marry into a wealthy family, couldn't you?
ひなみ沢にそんなお金持ちはいるのかな。難しそう。
Maybe Mion.
ね、簡単じゃないんだよ。
She's so mad. She just has a big, angry, like sad face. It's great. But here she's fucking pissed.
人間一人引き取るってのは誰かに押し付けようなんて短絡的な考えがそもそもダメなの。考えが浅いんだよ、ケイちゃんは。
なんなんだよ、チクショー。俺は必死に聡子を救おうと考えてるのにダメだってそればっかり。お前ら本当は聡子のことなんかどうでもいいんだろ。仲間のこと本気で心配してないんだろ。どうなんだよ。
そんなつもりないよ。でもそう簡単にはいかないっていうか。
そんな難しい話じゃねえだろ。裕福なやつが聡子をしばらく面倒見てくれればいい。そうだ、ミオンチはどうだよ。お前御三家とかいう立派な家柄なんだって自慢してたよな。話じゃものすごいでかい家に住んでるそうじゃないか。
うち？無理、そんなのバチャが許してくれるはずない。
じゃあ沖宮に住んでる親はどうだよ。聞いた話じゃこっちもかなりの豪邸に住んでるらしいじゃないか。
Oh god, Keiichi, shut the fuck
町
up,
には親
dude.
類の経営する店がたくさんあるそうだし、立派な資産家じゃないかよ。おい、
ダメ。沖宮の家なんてもっとダメ。うちのお父さんそんなの絶対に許さない。
おい、普段は散々大物ぶりを自慢しといてここ一番で及び腰かよ。
Oh god.
なんだよ。
Also, hey Bean, thanks for stopping by.
聡子を見殺しにする気かよ。
Jesus, fuck Keiichi.
そんなつもりはないけど。そりゃ私だって聡子は助けてやりたいよ。でも それとこれじゃ話が。
話が違うってのかよ。冷てえやつ。仲間の危機だろ。ここで救わなかったら何なんだよ。部長だろ、部活の。救えよ、仲間の危機をよ。今ここで救わなかったら仲間じゃねえ、人じゃねえ。お前の人間性が問われてるんだよ。聞いてるのかよ、ミオン。
My emotions all exploded out of me, and I didn't even give her a chance to say anything in response. I just wanted to make Mion agree with me, even if I had to force her. If she did, Satoko's problems would be solved. If pushing her would solve the issue, then I'd push her as much as I needed to.
何さっきから黙り込んでんだよ。聞いてるのかこの野郎。どうなんだよ。なんとか言ってるよ、園崎ミオン。
みー、
Mion, looking down with a grim face, began sobbing. Her hands were clenched into trembling fists, and she rubbed her eyes to wipe away the tears. Was what I said actually that mean? This isn't the time to cry. We're in the gambling room now, and we have to do something to save Satoko. And as I thought that, Irena spoke, her voice cold and incredibly calm.
ケイチ君、みーちゃん家がダメなら他の裕福な家を探したら？私、ひなみ沢に立派な豪邸建てて住んでる人知ってるよ。
They're known as the Maebara. Do you think they would take Satoko in?
誰だよ。
白々しいよ。あれだけ立派な家に住んでて自分の家だけは蚊帳の外。
She really did say it.
俺んちかよ。俺の家は。
仲間なんでしょ？救ってよ、ケイチ君が。
Oh.
みーちゃんはダメだってさ、冷たいから。じゃあ仲間思いのケイチ君がお手本示さなきゃダメだね。あれだけ大きなお家に家族3人で住んでるんだっけ？じゃあ空き部屋なんかいくらでもあるよね。余ってるお部屋いくつかさとこちゃんに分けてあげればいいじゃない。それでめでたくさとこちゃんの悩みは解決。あら何？これでもう終わり？あっけない話だったね。はいはい解決、お疲れ様。じゃあもう今日はいい？私帰るね。ランランラン。今日は久しぶりに宝探しにでも行こうかな。昨日まではずっとさとこちゃんのことが心配で全然遊ぶ気になんかならなかったし、今日はどんな宝物が見つかるかな。はうー。なんか言ってよ。私だけ喋りずくめ？
Holy fuck.
黙ってんじゃないわよ。聞いてんの？前原圭一。
Even the cicadas seemed to cower in fear. Irena, her shoulders bobbing up and down, and me, who had forgotten to breathe. Mion, whose face had gotten completely pale, and Rika, who was keeping silent as if nothing had happened. The atmosphere in the classroom grew tight and stiff, and it petrified us where we stood. The sound of the chair as Rena sat back down after having stood up finally allowed everyone present to take a breath. Rena had shown me just how much I'd hurt Mion.
レナが怖いのです。
After a few moments, Rika cut into the frozen air.
ごめんね、リカちゃん。みーちゃんもごめん。ケイチ君には謝らなくてもいいよね。
ああ、ごめん。めちゃくちゃなこと言って悪かった。
さっきのあれ、私に言ってたの？みーちゃん睨みながら言ってたから、私てっきりみーちゃんに言ってるもんだとばかり思ってた。
Rena had such strength, that you wouldn't have imagined it normally. All I did was spout terrible things as a wave of violent fury passed over me. I couldn't contend with her.
ミオン、ごめん。頭に血が上ってた。
Come to think of it, I didn't understand what had gotten into me that riled up. What had gotten me that riled up? I thought of myself as Satoko's Nini, so I had only had good intentions, that I'd think about it a little harder. Sorry, that I'd think about it a little harder than everyone else, and yet...
うん、いいよ。私こそケイちゃんが一生懸命悩んでるのに、あれはダメこれはダメばっかり言って。ごめんね。私も悪かった。
Mion rubbed away the tears in the corners of her eyes with her fists and apologized as well. We bowed our heads to each other and looked down without glancing at each other, or at the other. Someone, I don't know who, heaved a sigh. Satoko being tormented had been known about since last year. How had the tragedy back then saved Satoko? How had they brought it to an end? Right. In the end, nobody could do anything. All they could do was bear it patiently and wait for those agonizing days to end. That's right. The one who brought an end to those terrible days was some crazy drug addict nobody knew. On the night of the Watanagashi last year, their main aunt had been beaten to death, but it hadn't been done to save Satoko or Satoshi. Right. It really was just a coincidence. Satoko's friend, who needed to do something for her most of all, could do nothing. The incident may have been a tragic one, but from Satoko's viewpoint, it was nothing less than a miracle. Yes, a miracle. A miracle one could only wait for.
待つしかないのかよ。俺たちには。
Not for evidence of abuse, not for something that minor.
何をかな。
奇跡。
No one made fun of me for using such a crazy word. We couldn't come up with any solution, so it was the only thing we could do.
無力なんだよ。私たちは。
That one word Mion dropped was the finishing blow. It was hot. My body was sticky with sweat. The worst month. June. Well, actually, April is the cruelest month, but... that's the transition. The game does, still, it does an incredible job just with all of this. Especially with Keiichi's writing. Because again, while that scene was playing, I was like, man, Keiichi, you're being so unreasonable. You're being so cruel, you're being so mean, you're being so fucking stupid. Right? But then you have to remember, Keiichi is like 14. He is dumb. He is stupid. And he's just blurting things out. He's saying things without thinking because he's panicking, because he's scared, right? Because he's a young lad. He's very, 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 very well written. And again, I've mentioned this numerous times throughout the playthrough. But if you feel a certain way towards a character, if you think about it long enough, it's usually because they're well written. If you think, man, Keiichi's a fucking idiot, but you think about it a little bit more and you're like, oh, well, he's an idiot because of this. He's not thinking, he's being irrational. But that's because he's like 14, he's 15. So it makes sense. And that's what makes his character writing so good. That, and this is a trait that, at least by this point, you should be very familiar with involving Keiichi. Because remember, in chapter 1, I believe that happened when we were, God, what was it? I'm trying to remember specifically what we said to Arena, but then Arena said something back to us that was basically the same thing. It was something along the lines of like, I thought you said we weren't supposed to lie to each other, yet here you are lying to me. You've spoken to, like, the cops, you know about this, you know about that, but you never told anyone, huh, Keiichi? Right? After Keiichi, like, like, you know, yelled at her, and yeah, and then she's like, Usoda! She fucking, like, calls us a liar. In chapter 2, we yelled at Shion, or, well, Mion. We yelled at Mion and basically blamed her for everything. We're like, it's your fault this all happened. If you hadn't goaded me, if you hadn't convinced me to go with you, then, you know, then nothing would have happened. I would have been fine. I wouldn't be stuck in a situation where the villagers want to kill me, right? I wouldn't be hunted. Yet here I am, right? And now in chapter 3, we have Keiichi lashing out to his friends about wanting to protect Satoko. So it's very interesting. Like, again, this is a recurring theme throughout the entire series so far, at least. And, like we've heard many, many times, if he would just apologize as many times as he could, over and over again, everything would be fine. Right? I walked forward quite a ways, then turned right where the rice fields ended. I'd never come here before, so I had no idea where to go. I got lost several times, so I may have taken quite a long way around. Maybe I should have gone back home and gotten my bike first. It would have made everyone else worry if I'd asked them, so I asked one of our classmates where Satoko's actual house was. That house was originally her family's, apparently, not their uncle and his wife's. Their house had been bigger, so they had taken it for themselves. Right here. Several houses all on the line. I don't think we've seen this background either, so let's quickly check it. Looks interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's not too difficult to like catch any of this if you're like paying attention. But I can imagine it slipping by some people's heads. Especially if you're not playing this game consistently, kind of like how I've been. Well, I mean, I play it, twice a week? So I have to remember all this stuff, because sometimes I'll forget little things. But man, this background is so nice. Especially the trees. The trees are really nice. The ones in the background, at least. Not the one in the foreground looks a little weird. Because of the little leaves on the top left, to me, look a little weird. Meanwhile, the ones in the background look a lot better. Anyway, back to the original. Several houses all in a line. Over there? I was visiting Satoko's house, but didn't particularly intend to meet her there. I didn't mean to spy on the enemy, her mean uncle either. Maybe I just wanted to be a little closer to her, as her and Nini. Pretty words, but I didn't know if they were true. If what Tomito-kun and the others told me was right, it'd be this house. Oh, this place is like huge. It's such a huge house. Let's look at the console version of it. What the fuck? This looks really weird. Like what is this? Hold on. I don't know what those cables are connected to. It's like you have like two things on the top of the like home, and then those cables leading down to something in like the side of the house. What the fuck are those? I thought it was like an extension cord just like sticking out of like from under like the thatched roof, or from underneath like the little like a rain guard, and then it was just connected to something. I don't know what this might be, but in the original background it's a satellite like receiver, like a satellite dish for like cable or something. Or maybe internet even. I mean, yeah, I can imagine like there, like some people might just be oblivious to some of the stuff that I've pointed out, but I mean, I also just read a lot, so I've I'm good at picking up what's being put down for the most part. So I can imagine like the average reader, you know, might just go through this and enjoy it through like a surface level analysis, right? Of like, oh, okay, well, Keiichi's being attacked. Okay, so it looks like he just got attacked in chapter 1. He was having fun with his friends and things went bad. And the second one, it's like, oh, he had a romance and things went bad. And now here he's trying to be a big brother and then things went bad. If what Tobita-kun and the others told me was right, it'd be this house. When I recognized it, my feet grew heavy. What did I come here for? My motive for coming here was absurd. When Mion had said at the end that we were powerless, it made me sort of frustrated. I just wanted to do something, anything other than waste the days away praying for a miracle. That's what made me come here. But that was all. Even if I were to witness her uncle actually tormenting Satoko, what could I do? Would I act like a comic book hero, punch the guy in the face, and take Satoko away with me? And then live together somewhere far away? That was ridiculous.
無力だ。
The cicadas' voices raised in chorus sounded like they were scoffing at me. As though they were saying that if I couldn't do anything and wouldn't do anything, then I should go back home. I heard a car approaching, so I got out of its way. But the car stopped right behind me, its horn honking shortly once. Does this car have very cold AC? Annoyed, hadn't I gotten out of their way? I looked behind me, and a familiar face was looking at me out of the driver's seat window.
監督。
Oh god. I saw the car, and I was like, that's Oishi's car.
こんにちは、前原さん。こんなところでお会いするとは本当に奇遇です。お家は近くなんですか?
Me being here wasn't normal. Just as I considered somehow giving him the slip, I noticed Satoko sitting in the passenger seat.
さとこ
Satoko got out of the car and began unloading a lot of groceries from the trunk.
買い物の帰りに偶然監督にお会いしたんですのよ。送ってくださるというのでお言葉に甘えたのですわ。
And again, she looks just like dejected. I quickly want to see what it looks like when she talks with the sprite, if it'll show it.
自転車でこんなに買い物をしたら運びきれませんからね。
As Coach spoke, he pulled Satoko's bike from out of the back seat where they put it. The grocery bags were big, and there were 4 of them. They all seemed to be packed full and very heavy.
この袋セブンスマートおいおい自転車で行くにはちょっと遠すぎないか
I looked at the bags and saw that they were filled to the brim with sake bottles, snacks, and what you eat with sake, or snacks that you'd eat with sake, and boxes of cigarettes. Their weight was one thing, but their contents were nothing less than luxury items.
監督のおかげ
Never mind.
で助かりましたわ。
Okay, so we didn't get to see the sad sprite speak.
ちょっと坂道は辛かったですから。
Satoko gave Koji a smile and a smile filled with gratitude, but it was incredibly awkward and even heartrending.
さとここの買い物今晩の晩飯ってわけじゃないだろう
当然ですわ。私お酒なんか飲みませんし、おつまみも嫌いですし。
Oh, so this car is different. All right, let's check it real quick. I didn't think to change it. Oh, it is. Yeah, it is a different car. I believe the black car that we normally see that's Oish-san's. I believe that one is just like this exact same model, but in black. But yeah, no, this is completely different. Thanks for mentioning it. Maybe this was done on purpose. Like they show you the black car, because that's like the only image they have, at least for the visual novel, because they reuse the same backgrounds, right? And when you hear the honking, right, it maybe makes the player think, oh, it's Oishi. He's here to question us, because this is normally what happens around this point in the story. Like usually around chapter 6, usually around chapter 7, we start getting questioned more and more by Oisan, or maybe Oisan came to see Satoko after he followed us and saw that we weren't going home. So he was slowly trailing us while we weren't noticing.
タバコなんか吸うわけ。
He made Satoko go to a distant store by herself on her bike, so she could buy him dumb shit like this. And what was the uncle doing right now anyway? He must have been working up a good sweat at this very moment if he needed to send Satoko out by herself, right? If not, then how much had Satoko suffered for no reason? I hadn't intended to voice my feelings, but they may have made it into my face. Coach might have noticed because he clapped me on the shoulder. Just then, one of the house windows clattered open in the face of a vulgar man, the very sight of which made me immediately avert my eyes, emerged from within it. There were no self-introductions necessary. My gut told me that this was the uncle in question. I wonder if he's gonna get a Sprite. The first thing out of his mouth should have been words of gratitude for Satoko.
Satoko!
I don't see anything in the console, but just in case.
缶のガスかけっぱなしで出よったんな、この。
ごめんなさい。
Oh.
でもすぐに買いに行けって言ったから。
やかましいわ。せっかくの銀条台無しにしよってん。どうしよったんじゃ。
ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい、ごめんなさい。
Satoko miserably apologized over and over, bowing again and again. She could be perfectly described as a small animal. I had no idea what was happening. Satoko finished shopping for all this heavy stuff that wasn't even for dinner. She only managed to come back because she ran into Coach and he drove her home. If she hadn't been found by him, she'd surely still be by herself, panting and moaning, pedaling her bicycle up that steep hill. What was with those words? Those horrible, sleazy words that he said to Satoko? In what country's dictionary did it tell him to say such things to a young girl who just finished shopping? My anger, of course, wouldn't reach him. The uncle displayed no interest in me, instead shouting at Coach.
入江の先生じゃないですか。こんにちは。そしたら先生も上がっていきますか。
Hello, hello. Why is that in German?
もうオーラスですからすぐ入れますよ。ピンのワンツー、何でもありで。
He's hosting a card game? No. They're playing Mahjong?
いえ、遠慮します。
Yeah. I think we covered it in the chapter 2 discussion, like near the end, about how like Hinamizo was based on a real like prefecture, on like a real village, and how they actually have a onikakushi. No, sorry, they have a watanagashi like every year around June and stuff, which is really interesting. I showed some of the pictures of it as well, like of the village near the end, especially during the winter time, because Rena had mentioned something in chapter 12 about how like how when it snows it gets really fucking like annoying to get around.
さとこちゃんとは偶然お会いしたんで、ちょっとお送りしてあげただけです。すぐに失礼します。
そんな、ちょっとぐらいやってってくださいな。先生お金持ちじゃないですか。
I didn't even understand what her uncle and coach were talking about, but I knew one thing for sure. None of what he just said had been to thank Satoko in any way.
さとこ、とっととカーキも持ってこんかい。ビールも冷めてもうた。冷蔵庫から冷えてるの出してくれな。
てっちゃん、娘に厳しすぎや。 もうちょい言いたわらんとかいそうやで。
あんな娘にゃこの兄貴んちにいた頃からそうでよ。甘やかすと親の言うことをなんも聞かんやっちゃよ。たく。
それよか、てっちゃんのツモだぜよ。
I'm just checking to see if they have any.
椿さんリーチしよったで。
Nope. But it is Mahjong.
おお、悪い悪い。
Tsubaki's in Riichi. Oh no.
なんね。椿、あんたまたリーチかいな。
It looked like it wasn't just your uncle. Some of his friends were over. Hey, wait. What was he... No, what were they doing? Flinging rude words left and right, making Satoko go shopping for your beer? What were they doing?
町からおじさまのお友達が来てて、麻雀やってますの。お友達のお夕食もご用意するように言われてますのよ。
なんだよ、それ。
Mahjong? He called his friends over for Mahjong? They were too busy playing, so they sent Satoko to buy them a crapload of booze from a faraway store? And the first thing he said to her was how she left the gas on? What the hell? What the hell? What the fuck?
何やってんだよ、あいつ。麻雀って、そんなのに遊びほうけて、聡子にこんなのを買いに行かせるのかよ。
Even though Coach was listening, he pretended he wasn't. There was a line of heavy-looking shopping bags lined up on the ground next to the trunk.
さあ、前原さんも手伝ってあげてください。ほら、男の子なんですから、こっちの重い袋を持ちましょう。
監督、こんなのまかり通っていいんですか？こんなの絶対に。
Coach pretended he hadn't heard that violent outburst either. When I thought about it later, his reaction might have been the best thing he could do in this situation.
私も2つ持ちますから。ほら、前原さんも持つのを手伝ってあげてください。
The bags were packed to the brim with bottles of sake and bar snacks. They were so heavy and so filthy, so unfair. They weren't just heavy in terms of weight, they made me feel mortified. Nothing could have been heavier than that.
ケイチさん、無理しないでいいんですのよ。私も持ちますわ。
Satoko mistook my biting back the humiliation as grimacing under the weight and offered to help.
バカ。俺を舐めるな。
But yeah, it would be interesting to go to like the actual places where like all these pictures are from. It'd be super fucking cool. Satoko had never looked down on my physical strength in the slightest. Ugh.
監督もすみませんわね。重いでしょ？
No, not at all, answered Coach, smiling vaguely. Coolly. But I and I alone knew. Coach was an adult, so he knew just how to keep his feelings from showing. There was even more anger than I was feeling, burning deep in his eyes. Yeah.
いや、重いですね。
Shit. It wasn't very far to the doorstep of Satoko's house, but the bag squeezed my palms and started leaving red marks. Fury welled up in me, and the back of my throat stung. But even if it all came gushing out, it wouldn't solve anything. So, just tightly gritting my teeth was as much as I could do.
本当にありがとうございますですわ。監督もケイチさんもおかげで本当に助かりましたでございます。
After we carried them back to the door, Satoko said that was enough. Occasionally we'd hear the repulsive laughing of her uncle and his friends from within, and my insides would seethe. I knew they weren't ridiculing us. And that was why it made me so mad. They made Satoko shop for all this heavy, selfish stuff, then ignored her and laughed amongst themselves as they pleased. It was deeply aggravating. Of course, Coach had to have felt the same way. But if he accidentally let his feelings slip onto his face, he'd only cause Satoko more worry. He knew all that and spoke coolly, as if to say he didn't care.
いいえ。ささやかでもお力になれたなら幸い。お手伝いできそうなことがあったらいつでも言ってくださいね。
ええ、お気持ちだけでも本当に嬉しいですわ。
that he feels that way. Those words were sad. Satoko herself was sad and resigned that we could only help her so much. But she was right. No matter how much Coach or I wanted to help Satoko, this was as much as we could do. I felt absolutely ashamed at not having the power to help her any more than this. Burning, boiling emotions were bubbling up within me and rising into my throat. Trembling all over, I almost started to cry from my
俺
fury.
も力になれることがあったらいつでも力を貸すから頑張れよな。
I wanted to at least give her those trite words, saying that I'd help her whenever she wanted.
ええ、
She looks so fucking horrible. Like she looks like she's just going through it. Obviously.
ありがとうございますわ。わざわざこうしてここまで来てくださっただけでも嬉しかったですわ。
Satoko seemed to have guessed what I was doing in a place like this, when my house was in the opposite direction from school.
さあ、もう行った方がよろしいですわ。今は酔っ払ってますから、どんな難癖をつけられるかわかりませんわよ。
She felt guilty getting us involved after we'd helped her, because she wanted to be the only one to suffer this misfortune. That's how it looked, and it hurt. I handed my supermarket bag over to Satoko, and then I noticed on the back of Satoko's hand there was something that looked like a bruise.
おい、サトコ、このあざどうしたんだよ。
I knew that as much as anyone else how transparent that sounded. I didn't need to hear it from Satoko to know how this bruise came to be.
階段で転んだ時にちょっと打っただけですのよ。気になさらないでくださいませ。
嘘だろ。
Coach nudged me in the back, and then put his index finger to his mouth to chide me from being so loud.
本当にありがとうございましたですわ。では明日、学校でお会いできるといいですわね。
そんな話してないだろ。その手のあざはどうしたって聞いてるんだよ。
The evening glow finally got to a point where I could see the other concealed oval-shaped bruises and traces of swelling on her neck and on her legs, and other places too.
階段から落ちたんですの。
The very moment my violent, rampaging emotions were about to burst their way out of their throat, I found my mouth being tightly clamped down on. Coach was pressing down on my mouth from behind, wrapping around me tightly with his hands. Because of that, I couldn't say anything. I could only groan, which I did. That was all I could do. I needed to expel all the magma sitting deep within me, because otherwise I'd surely explode into a million pieces that very moment. So I groaned. I groaned. From my mouth, from my whole body, while heat fell in drops from my eyes, I groaned and groaned. I groaned to the point of exhaustion. I wrung absolutely everything out of myself. Even having lost my voice, I was still wringing it all
気
out.
持ちはわかります。わかりますから前原さん。今だけこらえてください。お願いですから。前原さん。
Endure it for now? And then what, huh? What would happen to her, to Satoko? Her body and mind were wounded and she was being made to suffer like this? Can you not even let me howl in vain at it? Is that it, Coach? Are we this powerless? So powerless that we can't even fucking scream from the bottom of our hearts? The voices of the Higurashi made me calm down. I didn't know how long it had been. Satoko abruptly gave a slight bow.
ありがとうございますですわ、ケイチさん。
サトコ。
今、ケイチさんが本当のニーニーみたいに見えました。
Aw.
私の本当のニーニーはいなくなってしまったけど、私にはケイチさんというニーニーがいてくれる。
そうだ。俺がお前のニーニーだ。お前が辛い時絶対に助けてやるから。ニーニーがサトコをきっと助けてやるからな。
Satoshi Hojo. You fucking idiot. If not now, then when? Satoko. She's never been in more pain in her life. Oh, and this music. Which song is this? I don't think we've heard it before. Sorry. If her Nini doesn't save her now, then when will he? Why did you run away? Why did you abandon her? Why did you leave Satoko behind? You don't have any right to call yourself Satoko's Nini.
俺は逃げないからな。絶対に逃げない。サトシみたいにお前を見捨てて逃げたりしない。絶対に俺はお前を見捨てない。
Oh, she's crying. Oh no. Tears trickled down from Satoko's eyes. And then she narrowed her eyes into a smile.
さよなら。ニーニー。
Satoko took her right hand and awkwardly waved to me.
大丈夫ですわ。今のニーニーので、私、いっぱい力をもらいましたから。
I think it might have played then as well. Yeah, like when Mion was telling us everything.
大丈夫。
Last chapter.
明日まで頑張れますから。大丈夫。だから、ね。今日はさよならでございますわよ。
There's no way that I could say, bye, see you tomorrow. And then, from inside the house came a throaty, disgusting voice.
サトコ、はよ乾きも持ってこんかい。
さあ、ニーニー。早く行ってくださいませ。もう、私は大丈夫ですから、早く。
行きましょう。前原さん、これ以上はかえってサトコちゃんに迷惑をかけます。
監督、ニーニーのお家はちょっと遠いんですの。申し訳ございませんが、送ってあげていただけます？
ええ、わかりました。
Coach grabbed me by my collar with strength I couldn't have imagined him having, started dragging me away. And I, unable to oppose him, started getting further away from Satoko. She waved her hand to us, expression still dark, and disappeared through the back door. Coach got into the car first, and then turned around on the narrow path and brought the passenger side door around for me.
前原さんの気持ちは痛いくらいにわかります。いえ、前原さん以上にわかるつもりです。でも、今この場だけはこらえてください。あなたの心は確かに伝わりましたから。だから、こらえてください。でないと。
もう分かってます。すみません。さっきはありがとうございました。
I meekly got into the passenger seat. The car accelerated quickly, and Satoko's house grew further and further away in the rearview mirror. We made a wide turn, and then I couldn't see her house anymore.
え？ あなたのお家そんな遠くなんですか？学校の反対側じゃないですか。
I didn't bother to reply. I would have been hard pressed to give him an answer as to why I was at Satoko's house. Coach didn't say anything more either. For a while, the two of us were silent. The only sounds from the gravel spraying over the road as we drove. I remembered how Irena said things were different than last year. At the time, she had Satoshi with her. Satoshi protected Satoko. So that less of the sparks fell onto her.
でも今はサトシはいない。
はい、残酷ですがそれが事実です。
Coach seemed to understand what I really meant when I said that.
悲しくあまりに残酷な話ですが、私たちの決意や努力、尽力には限界があります。
It sounded like an excuse, but he was right. Even if Coach and I wanted to be people Satoko could depend on, that was all. It ended at the front door. No matter how much I shouted that I would be her Nini, no matter how much I shouted that I wouldn't abandon her, and no matter how much Satoko called me Nini, I couldn't do any more than that.
サトシは一体どこに行っちまったんですか？
Right. Satoshi was another story. Her actual brother, Satoshi, he was in a position to protect her far, far better than we ever could. That was the cold, sad truth of the massive gulf between Satoshi and us.
今頃どこでどうしているんでしょう。
Satoshi left home. I didn't know why. Maybe it was because of Oyashiro-sama's curse, or he disappeared or something. In any case, he wasn't beside Satoko now. At the time Satoko needed him to protect her the most, he wasn't there. He wasn't here.
今ここにいないんですか？一番守ってやらなければならないこの時に。
お社様のたたりがどうとかいろいろ言われてますが、家出したとしか言えません。
ある日を境に帰ってこないって仲間が言ってました。妹の聡子に書き置き一つ残さずに家出を。
サトシ君はコツコツとアルバイトをしてたんです。聡子ちゃんが当時とても大きなぬいぐるみを欲しがってましてね。結構いい値段らしくて、そのためにアルバイトをいろいろとしていたらしいんです。妹思いの兄でしたからね。おじ夫婦のもとで不憫な生活を強いられている妹に少しでも立派な誕生日プレゼントを贈ろうとしているんじゃないかってみんなささやき合っていました。
Oops. In the end, he didn't use his savings for a birthday present for Satoko.
サトシ君がいなくなり、警察がいろいろと調べたら、サトシ君の貯金が当日すべて本人によって下ろされていることが分かりました。方々をいろいろと調べた結果、その貯金を資金に東京の方に行ったんではないかということになりました。
東京？何しに？
家出としか言いようがないじゃないですか。
自分が逃げ出すための資金をコツコツと貯めて、そこまでは勝手ですよ。でも聡子を置いてくことはないじゃないですか。同じ家出するなら聡子も連れて行くべきだった。
Even now, Coach was still calm. He wasn't trying to pour any oil on the fire of my anger at all. He just waited until my anger naturally subsided. After listening to gravel being crushed under the wheels for a little while, Coach spoke abruptly.
察してください。置いていかれた聡子ちゃんも同じ考えに至ったんです。
I'm a burden on my brother, and that's why he abandoned me. He didn't take her with him when he left. How terrible must Satoko have felt being betrayed by the brother she loved so much.
でも聡子ちゃんはとても強い人でした。もちろん親しい友人たちの支えもあってのことでしたが、ああして笑顔を取り戻すことができました。
I recalled how Satoko had spoken of Satoshi so brightly when I was eating dinner with her and Rika-chan a few days ago. At the time, I didn't think any more of it than how pleasant her sibling love had been, or their sibling love had been. But now that I did think about it, I realized it was like she was peering into the distance from atop a pile of tragic perseverance.
サトシ君はきっと帰ってくる。その時までにお荷物じゃなくなった自分を見てほしいって。
サトコはお荷物なんかじゃないですよ。あいつ俺なんかよりよっぽど生活力はあるし、大抵のことは何だってできる。そりゃレナやリカちゃんなんかと比べれば劣る点はたくさんあるかもしれないけど、そこいらのやつよりよっぽど一人前ですよ。
サトシ君がいつ帰ってきてもいいように、そういう風になれるよう涙ぐましい努力があったんですよ。
Well, she lived with Rika, while Rika taught her how to handle everything flawlessly. All that she could welcome back Satoshi at any time, so that she could show him she wasn't ashamed.
で、そのサトシはいつ帰ってくるんですか？
I asked Coach, but knew he wouldn't be able to answer. In any case, Satoshi ran away. He left Satoko and ran away from Hinamizawa. Someone said that when you leave Hinamizawa and run away, well, Yashiro-sama's curse gets you, right? Then that made sense. Satoshi running away and his disappearance, that would obviously mean people thought it was a curse, right? And they could smile, as though it were his own fault, as though he got what he deserved. Hey, Oyashiro-sama, whoever you are, Satoshi didn't vanish because he ran away. You demoned him away with your curse, didn't you? If that's not what happened, then I won't forgive you.
サトシはいつ頃逃げ出したんですか？
去年の綿流しのお祭りの夜、おばが異常者に殺されて、その数日後のサトコちゃんの誕生日にです。
サトコの誕生日に？
I slammed my hands on the dashboard in front of me with all my might. Satoshi, of all the days he could have chosen to run away. Their aunt just died a few days before, didn't she? All your days of suffering were about to end, weren't they? You were just about to start thinking about a new life, weren't you? It's wrong to be happy about someone dying, but for Satoko and her brother, her birthday had come at a critical turning point. Their mean uncle had fled town and the siblings would be left alone. They should have been able to be happy about that on Satoko's birthday. Satoko was probably waiting for her brother to return the whole time. Waiting for her brother to return when he never did. Waiting with bated breath for her brother to return, her hopes and dreams of a new life to come growing ever larger. But no matter how long she waited, he didn't come back. He didn't even contact her. Satoko trembling in anticipation of a great present, just when would she would have to face the cold, terrible truth? Or when would she have to face the cold, terrible truth? Satoshi, you fucking idiot. Actually, wait. Hold on. If I do it like this, then do this. What specific word did they end up using? I'll look it up later, but I just want to make sure, because anytime like they say something like "oh you fucking idiot" or "fuck you," it's always like a slightly different word. But I'm pretty sure this just means like I can't read the kanji, but I'm pretty sure it's saying something like "a hole" or something along those lines. Like anyway, I could feel my blood rising to my head and my anger at Satoshi. I was frustrated. I was aggravated. I could not forgive him. Satoko still respected and adored her brother, and yet he so heartlessly betrayed her. Such a person wouldn't just come back now when he was most needed. Yes, no one would protect her, not even her real brother Satoshi.
だからあなたがニーニーだと認めてもらえて 嬉しかったです。
え？
私も聡子ちゃんの幸せを祈る一人ですが、社会的立場があり、日中は仕事をしている身です。私が聡子ちゃんのために割いてあげられる時間は少ない。でもあなたは違います。学校で生活を共にし、聡子ちゃんや聡くんとも年はほとんど離れていない。あなたは自分ができることに限りがあると思っていますが、それでも私よりはずっと聡子ちゃんに手を差し伸べられる場所にいるのです。だから私の分まで聡子ちゃんの力になってあげてほしい。そう願っています。
そんなことは監督だって。
もちろん年季のある私だからこそできる助けだっていろいろあると思います。同じようにあなたにしかできない助けだってあるということです。私たちは互いにそれを全うすべきだと申し上げたいのです。
Right. Was that a little too complicated? Coach added that, but I shook my head in response. When I heard him say that he had job skills, it reminded me that that he was an adult in a different position from all of us. Maybe I should ask him about it.
監督は法律とか詳しいですか？
いえ、平均的に疎いですが。
Oh my god. I thought back to when I argued with Mio and then the others about Satoko. Our children's argument had only left us with the conclusion that we had to wait and see. But what would an adult think?
児童福祉法でしたっけ？児童の安全を確保するために緊急措置として親子を分離させるという方法があるそうです。
Right. Which I don't think that would be possible. Like, even in this situation? Considering how, well, again, like, we would need proof, right? And we kind of have it.
緊
But,
急措置？
hmm.
じゃあすぐに聡子をおじの元から救い出せるということじゃないですか？
聡子ちゃんがそれを望まないかもしれません。虐待されている本人が避難を望まなければ弱いでしょうから。
That too.
聡子が望まない？どうして？
Coach didn't answer me. I didn't know why he didn't. It was clear as day that Satoko's uncle was being violent and treating her like a slave. So then, why? I clamped down on my frenzied emotions and waited intently for Coach to answer, but he never did. It was like he was pretending he hadn't heard me. If I had to say, it was more like he wanted to explain but couldn't put it into the right words.
聡子ちゃんは多分そういういじめに耐えるのを試練だと考えているかもしれません。
試練？変な宗教じゃあるまいし。
ご存知と思いますが、サトシ君は聡子ちゃんをずっとかばってきました。聡子ちゃんもずっとサトシ君に頼ってきました。甘えてきたと言うべきかもしれません。
I'd known for a while that Satoshi had always protected Satoko from her aunt and uncle. But that was his duty as an older brother, not something to worry about.
それがトラウマになったかもしれないんですよ。自分が兄にもたれかかりすぎたから、兄が自分を嫌ってしまったんではないかってね。
Yeah, so now she has, like, abandonment issues, unfortunately. Fuck, because, like, this is probably why, again, Satoko doesn't want, or, like, didn't come to anybody for help. Because, well, when she needed help from her brother, and her brother offered help and was helping her, he left. He disappeared one day. And now that Satoko needs help again because of the abuse and what she's going through, she feels like if she were to ask for help, that Keiichi would eventually go away as well, just like Satoshi. And for Satoko, the current situation was a retelling of the story of a little over a year ago. But this time, Satoshi wasn't here.
だから誰にも頼らずに自分の力だけで試練を乗り越えたい。そういう力を身につけなければサトシ君は帰ってこない。そういう考えになっていると私は考えます。
Now that he mentioned it, Satoko had never said a word about how hard it had been before. I figured she was being threatened not to talk about it,
みんな
but
と相談して児童相談所とかに通報すべきかなんて話をしてました。
聞いてますよね。昨年も福祉士さんがサトコちゃんのところに行ってるのは。
はい。結局様子見で余計にいじめられたって話も。
あれ、サトコちゃんが自分で通報したらしいんです。で、その結果、余計いじめが水面下へ移行してエスカレートした。サトコちゃんに降りかかるいじめも増え、それをかばうサトシ君の負担も著しく増えた。
ひょっとしてサトコ、それ通報した自分の責任だなんて思ってるんじゃ。
Coach nodded
多
quietly.
分サトコちゃんに通報の話をするととても嫌がるが、その必要はないと強がりを言うと思います。サトコちゃんに内緒で通報したとしても、福祉士に対して自分は虐待を受けていないと言い張るでしょうね。
Satoko always acts tough and doesn't readily admit defeat, so I could imagine that easily.
一応児童相談所には裁判所の許可も当事者の許可も一切不要で緊急措置ができる強い権限があるんだそうです。虐待が公然の事実ならサトコちゃんが否定しても身柄は強制的に保護されるでしょう。それはサトコちゃんにとっては負けを意味するものなのかもしれませんが。
勝ち負けの問題じゃないですよ。サトコは現実に。
話を折りますが、身柄が保護されると養護院等の施設に送致されます。そうするとですね、そこで暮らすことになるので、つまりですから学区変更で転校にもなります。
転校は仕方ないです。それであいつが保護されるなら。
サトコちゃんはその辺の事情も知っています。だからますます保護を望みません。
Crazy. Also, yeah, thanks for stopping by, Gabriel. Hope you had fun and sleep well.
どうして
あの家でサトシ君の帰りを待つのがサトコちゃんの生きる理由だからですよ。兄に捨てられ廃人同然になりかけた少女が何に生きる理由を見出したか、あなたのでなくサトコちゃんの価値観で考えてあげてください。
I felt like he was trying to confuse me with that with that hard to understand, with that hard to understand roundabout way of talking so unique to adults. The point was that I couldn't do anything about Satoko wanting to stay in that house, and that I should watch until she gives in. In the end, no matter what I said, Coach himself was saying to wait and see.
俺はわかりませんよ。
はい。
俺は本当にサトコが危ないと感じたら誰の意思も聞かずに通報します。その結果サトコは不快な思いをして俺を恨むことがあるかもしれないけど、最終的にはそれがサトコの幸せにつながると信じます。
Also, before I forget, this interior might also be different in the console backgrounds. It is not. I thought maybe like the seats or something would be different since this is a white car and it's not Oisan's car, but I guess not. Coach turned to me and gazed fixedly into my eyes. It was written all over his face. He was shocked at what such a young kid had said.
どうしてあなたはそこまで
Coach, no, rather normal adults might not have understood. So I taught him the creed and the values that I believed in.
サトコは俺の仲間だから。そして俺はサトコのニーニーだから。では理由は足りませんか？
I stared at him with I stared at him with a will strong and unbreakable as steel as his eyes betrayed a tiny bit of unrest.
いえ足りないなんてことはありません
We were silent for a little while until finally Coach said only that.
誓ったじゃないですか、俺たち。
すみません
サトコを絶対に泣かせないって。
We made a vow on that day of the barbecue party. I didn't think about it hard at all, but Coach and I still made a promise that we wouldn't ever let Satoko cry. Coach gave a dry grin of regret, immediately apologizing for not remembering. One way or another, when he grinned like that, it made me think that his enthusiasm for saving Satoko was a tiny bit smaller than mine. He lightly hit the brakes, making a skidding noise, and my whole body suddenly fell forward.
ひょっとして前原さんのお家ってあれですか？ああ、前原屋敷が前原さんのお家だったんですね。
Before I knew it, we were almost to my home. Or to my house. Also, I never noticed it, but like, remember, like these roads are all like gravel and dirt, right? They're not paved. So I didn't notice like the little holes on like, you know, on the road here. Like these are all just like, you know, it's after it had rained. You just have like a bunch of like little puddles everywhere, which is something. I don't believe the console backgrounds have this. I think, yeah, it's just like some dirt road instead. But anyway. Yeah, because I don't remember them being there before, so I'm pretty sure they weren't. Anyways. And another, like, chapter just ending in the middle, like, before the day is over. But let's go and look at the tips. But before we do that, this chapter was a great, like, contrast as well in terms of, like, the writing, as you might have noticed. Between both, Keiichi and the coach's like way of handling things. Obviously we saw like the first half of the chapter was Keiichi just lashing out at Mion and being like, how come you can't do anything? How come you won't do anything? He's yelling, he's fucking screaming at her and the like. He's in pain and because he wants to help Satoko so fucking badly, but he can't do anything about it. And then when Coach shows up, Coach is feeling the exact same way as Keiichi, but he is an adult. So he is an adult and he knows how to handle and compose himself in difficult situations. Unlike Keiichi, again, who is a kid. He's still just a teenager. So it's a really, really, really interesting contrast between the two sides, and just kind of reminding you of like the maturity, like the difference in maturity between these two characters. Like how a kid would behave versus how an adult would behave, which is really, really, really nice. It's a nice reminder. But all right, let's look at the new tips. So case 31, December 1st, 1981, Prefecture Juvenile Welfare Division report. Do not view, do not duplicate. Case 31, November 20th. Satoko Hojo, X years old. Residence, so-and-so Hinamizawa Village, Shishibone. 1. Consultation circumstances. Anonymous telephone SOS of child abuse. 2. Abuse situation. Anonymous claims that the female child is suffering physical abuse by adoptive parents, her guardians. 3. Family structure. so-and-so marks abusers. These marks abusers, like those mark abusers. Adoptive father, adoptive mother, older brother, child in question. Okay. Sorry, I thought they were listing all of the abusers in order, but no, just the adoptive father and mother, of course, are the ones marked. Anyway, note, in June 1980, the child's parents died in an accident, and she was given to her uncle on her father's side, her father's younger brother. 4. Child Consultation Center's response. On the day of the anonymous telephone consultation, the center called the child's school and asked of her situation. The next day, the welfare office on duty visited the child's home and heard what they had to say. Both adoptive parents agreed to the center's coaching, contacted Anti-Abuse Network in the city. As part of the suggested coaching, a district welfare officer in the area began visiting for coaching at fixed intervals. The scrawled note below is stapled to the report. Related information from the former official, Mr. W. Refer to the 1977 documented D2-3 number 44. Ask Chief Investigator F from the city's education consultation offices. He is well informed about it. Huh? That was a somewhat confusing note.